Alright, hey guys, this is a new video. I'm just putting this together because my Earthshatter Titan guide did pretty well. I just make these videos for fun and got a few hundred views, so it also seemed like it helped people out in the comments with people like, not realizing some stuff that I'm doing could be strong or reevaluating what they're doing. So I just wanted to put this together for this Witch Hunter that I'm playing. It's Galvanic Shards with Shockburst rounds. It's been pretty good so far. It's cruising pretty comfortably through red maps. I think there's a lot of work that this character needs. I just kind of got tired of the melee playstyle for a little bit, but I do intend on revisiting my Titan when I get a little bit more motivation. But for now, this has been a lot of fun, and I want to show you guys what I'm doing. And if I'm doing something stupid, you could tell me. Or you could take some ideas and incorporate it into your build. So the basis of the build is Galvanic Shards is our clear skill. That's this one right here. Just basically shoots out a big range of bolts that chain lightning beams between enemies that are close by. Our single target is a pairing of Stormcaller Arrow, which is a bow skill. So you click it, it shoots an arrow that embeds into a target, and then that arrow calls down a lightning bolt, which has a really good chance to shock. And then Shockburst rounds is specifically very good against shocked targets. So when you shoot a shocked target with Shockburst rounds, it activates this pulse part of the skill. So if the target isn't shocked when you shoot them, this pulse doesn't activate. So I guess also if they're electrocuted, because it's a lightning ailment, but we're only shocking, we don't really electrocute. So that's pretty much how the build works. For our clear, we're using Galvanic Shards, and then for our single target, we're using Stormcaller Arrow with Shockburst rounds. And yeah, we'll cover the supports right now. So Sorcery Ward, this is something that I'm taking on the Witch Hunter Ascendancy. This is something that's still in testing. I'm just testing it out and seeing how it does. It seems pretty strong right now. You can see that I just have a 1000 elemental damage shield. We were never stacking enough armor and evasion to actually make the stats meaningful, so losing some of that armor and evasion by using Sorcery Ward is not that big of a deal right now. I think ideally this build actually switches over to pure evasion and can probably still eke out some meaningful evasion percentages while also using Sorcery Ward. But that's something that I'll talk about a little bit later, but I do think is a viable and probably better way to build the character. So then, yeah, we're just supporting it with all of the fire, cold, and lightning masteries. I'll say right now, I actually don't know if this does anything. This skill gem seems kind of bugged. You can't add quality to it, even though it says that there is like a quality modifier where it should be taking an additional 10% of your armor and evasion rating. I think that's because it's kind of like, this bow shot and crossbow shot, you can't take this skill out. It's not a gem. So I'm guessing that maybe there's some coding behind the scenes that's going to need to happen to allow you to add quality to this, because right now you can't add quality, and it would be really nice if you could, because it would be an additional 10% of your armor and evasion rating that gets added to this. So yeah, I mean, I'm just putting these in here because they're actually really not important or that important for any of our other skills, and if it does something, then great. So that's Sorcery Ward. Stormcaller Arrow. So this is, like I said, this is the main way that we are shocking. It's pretty good. We're supporting it with Conduction, which is supported skills have 100% more chance to shock, because like I said, all we care about from this ability is that it shocks when it hits. So we're using Conduction, we're using Fast Forward to make the bolt that gets called down onto the projectile to make that happen a little bit faster. And then we are using Lightning Exposure, mainly because there's just not a whole ton of other great stuff to use. There is one other good support, which is, let me pull it out really quick to show you. Stormcaller arrow. I believe it is, yeah, overcharge. So 75% increased magnitude of shocks inflicted with supported skills, but less shock duration. I think that I'm actually at the point where if I had a fourth socket on Stormcaller arrow, I would take this because I have a lot of shock duration on the tree. So I think it would actually be quite good because the magnitude of shocks is a big deal. So, but right now we're using lightning exposure, fast forward, and conduction on Stormcaller arrow, and these are all pretty good. You definitely want conduction. Fast forward you could probably drop it for the magnitude of shock if you wanted to. I just tend to like it because if I'm fighting like a rare in a pack or something, I want the bolt to come down really fast so I can switch to the Shockburst rounds and just kill the rare, so I don't want to have to wait too long for that bolt to come down. And then lightning exposure is just, nice to have. It's another minus 20% to lightning resistance, makes you do more damage. So we have Wind Dancer. This is, and really quickly, let me just speak to quality as well in Stormcaller arrow. You definitely want quality on this. That's going to give you increased shock duration, and I'll cover the gems that you want quality on as I go through. But yeah, definitely want quality on Stormcaller arrow. So Wind Dancer, you also want quality on this. It gives you an extra stage, and each stage gives you 19% more evasion rating. This scales with level, so I think it's 1% per level. So at level 20, this should be 22%. So the way that this skill works is when you get hit by a melee attack, it will take all of the stages away, and then it'll knock everything around you away from you. This is quite a good support. I'm sure you guys have seen this support around plenty. You don't really care about the damage. In fact, it would be great if this part of the thing wasn't a thing and you just always got to keep the evasion no matter what, but that's the balance. Otherwise, it would be probably a little bit too good. So we're supporting that with Cannibalism because Cannibalism is probably the single best additional reservation persistent buff support in the game. And then Vitality, it's just a nice to have. You could replace this with Herbalism if you wanted to, or if you have some extra spirit, put Herbalism into one of these. But in general, we don't need a ton of these kind of persistent buff supports. Like Clarity, all that kind of stuff is just not that important for us. So it's all kind of whatever. You definitely want Cannibalism though. And I only have the 100 spirit that you get from the campaign, so you should be able to fit these auras in without a problem if you follow what I'm doing. So Shockburst rounds. This is our big single target damage, and I think I really don't like this, but the quality doesn't do anything for this skill, so don't worry about putting quality on this. It does technically, right? Like you're getting more bolts loaded per clip, but the ability already has a ton of bolts in the clip. It's 1 bolt per level of the ability, so at level 18 you have 18 bolts in the clip. You don't need more than that, I guarantee it. Having 7 more is, of course, if you have gem cutters, prisms burning a hole in your pocket, add some quality, that's fine, get some extra bolts, but it's really not important, and I would spend them elsewhere before you spent it there. So yeah, this one is really whatever in terms of quality, but in terms of supports, we have Elemental Focus. We really don't care about this actually applying shock. We just want this to do damage, right? Our shock is getting applied by Stormcaller arrow, so we don't care about the shock from this. So Elemental Focus is great for us. Scattershot is really fucking good. This is probably the best single support with this skill. You get the skill does 20% less damage and has 20% less attack and cast speed, but you get 2 additional proj, and all of the damage from this skill comes from the pulse damage when you're hitting a lightning ailment inflicted enemy. So when you're shooting 2 more projectiles, you are proccing that pulse way more often. So Scattershot is really, really great with Shockburst rounds. Then we have Heft. This is kind of a weird one, but it actually works that when you add maximum physical damage to the range and then convert that into a element damage, so you can see that our pulse is 100% of physical damage to lightning damage. this actually works. Heft does add damage to the pulse. It's kind of weird and counterintuitive. You would think that it wouldn't do anything, but that range affects the pulse damage. So Heft is actually really good. Other things that you would want in here if you had more sockets is just anything that gives you more elemental damage. Stuff like Primal Armament, just anything that gives you more elemental damage on this skill is good, or more lightning damage, right? Like lightning infusion or something like that. So anything like that is good. You just want damage on that. So then our other aura, Herald of Thunder. Also, I will mention this is a good thing to quality because you get 2 additional attack hits with the lightning bolts that you get from the buff. So this is actually good to quality. I have not qualityed it yet, but it is, you should when you can. So on Herald of Thunder, we have Concentrated Effect. You don't really need the bolt to hit like a wide area. You just want it to blast whatever you hit and kill it. So Concentrated Effect is good. Innervate is really nice. Getting that extra lightning damage for 3 seconds on killing a shocked enemy is actually pretty good. That triggers when the bolt from Herald of Thunder kills something, which happens often. And Innervate is just a bunch of extra damage whenever that happens. So this obviously, Herald of Thunder does basically nothing on the bosses. It just kind of is what it is. But against, when you're clearing the map, Herald of Thunder is pretty good, and Innervate goes with that pretty well. And then we have Coursing Current, which is just helps spread some shock. You will shock with Galvanic Shards, even though when you look at the tree here in a second with me, you're going to see that we don't have a lot of shock chance unless we have our bow out. We use a lot of the weapon passive skills, but you will still hit white mobs hard enough with Galvanic Shards that you pretty often will apply shock to them. So it's still this is still worth using, because you're going to have the Herald of Thunder buff a decent amount of the time, and then when that hits, it might spread shocks and keep your shock chain kind of going and giving you more Herald of Thunder. So then our primary clear skill, Galvanic Shards. This is actually a pretty nice one to add quality to because Galvanic Shards has quite a low clip size. It has a 5 clip size by default. So getting an extra, the 20 for every 10%, it's another bolt. So you go from 5 to 7 at 20%. So getting an extra 2 bolts is actually quite nice for your clear so that you are reloading less. So yeah, this is just, there's not too much to say about it. It just does some lightning damage and splits that damage between nearby enemies. For supports, we have Fork. This is actually really nice because the projectile will hit and then fork, and then those forked projectiles will also shoot lightning beams between enemies. So this actually is very, very helpful for your clear in making sure that you're kind of like hitting the whole screen when you are, or like hitting an entire direction when you're shooting in a direction. If you don't take fork, I found that it can kind of be a little anemic. Like sometimes you'll be shooting into a crowd and you're just kind of like not killing them fast enough because you're just not hitting enough of them at a single time. So fork really helps with that, and I highly recommend it. We got Martial Tempo for more attack speed. This helps us reload the skill faster. This helps us fire the bolts faster. It's really nice in this skill. And then we have Lightning Infusion. So just some extra damage as extra lightning damage. And then kind of same thing for Shockburst rounds. I think that these, like if we were to have 6 links or 5 supports on each of these, we'd be pretty pressed to find good support gems. These are kind of like the important ones. Primal Armament is like the last like free, put it in, it's just damage. So yeah, it's not super important to get these like completely linked up. They're kind of almost as good as they get. Primal Armament, like I said, it's going to go in and it's going to be more damage, but it's kind of going to be tough. So I wouldn't worry too much about getting a ton of links on this build. Like you're going to do pretty well just with 3 links on most of your skills. But I think that as more supports come into the game, I think that when I look at the support list, it seems like there's a lot of lightning support stuff missing. Like there's no support gem that allows you to consume shocks like there are with ignites and freezes. So I think that we're going to have more options as early access continues. But for now, this is we kind of don't have a ton. This is kind of it. So Voltaic Grenade, I actually don't use at all. You can see it's not on my bar. Emergency Reload. This is actually really good, especially when you are fighting a boss or something like that you have shocked. You're firing off all of your Shockburst rounds, and you can actually press this button as you are in the middle of firing. So like if I'm firing my Shockburst rounds and I'm starting to run low, right? Like I can just press it while I'm firing, and there's no animation, there's no stopping. So you can just fire off a ton of rounds that way. And with this, we have Persistence, which is the buff that it applies to the bolt that it reloads will last for longer. Then we have a increased cooldown recovery rate to get emergency reload back off of cooldown a little bit faster. And then Premeditation, which is whatever you empower with the supported skill, it'll do some more damage. So that's all that this does. If you want quality on this, it just adds some cooldown recovery rate. So not the biggest deal in the world, but kind of the same thing as, Shockburst rounds, or, if you have some GCPs burning a hole in your pocket, go ahead and put some quality on it. And then Plasma Burst I've experimented with, and I don't love it. I think it's the total attack time is just too long. The explosion, I think, it really only happens upon hitting terrain, and that just doesn't happen all the time. So not getting this explosion kind of makes it worthless. So I think that this is not the best skill, and I don't love it. I've seen some people using it to apply shock instead of Stormcaller Arrow, and it's probably pretty consistent for that because it has a 30% more chance to shock, and then it's also hitting pretty hard. So it'll almost always shock the target that it hits, but it's just so much slower than Stormcaller Arrow, and Stormcaller Arrow does often shock. So I don't think that this skill is necessary, and I don't really use it. I just kind of have it in the skills for fun because I have some extra room. So this is gems. I think that pretty much gets after everything there. So we can look at the passive tree now. So yeah, like I said, we are playing a Witch Hunter. We are taking Culling Strike and Decimating Strike because these are just like pretty much the reason why you would want to play Witch Hunter in the first place. These are the 4 passives that are insane here. So Culling Strike, if you didn't know, when enemies of certain rarities, they have different thresholds based on their rarity, but at a certain threshold of health, they will just instantly die when you hit them. You don't need to put them to 0 health. It effectively reduces their maximum HP by whatever their threshold is. So this is an extremely good thing to have without having to invest in it. You just get it. I mean, I guess you're investing in it in that you put 2 points in your Ascendancy to get this, but you don't have to do a lot. And it's very good to have this on all of your abilities. So just having Culling Strike all the time is really, really strong. Then we have Judge, Jury, and Executioner. This gives you Decimating Strike. This is a really good ability, but it is a little RNG in how it applies to bosses. So as you can see, it's just hits against full life enemies remove between 5% and 30% of life, and it's completely random. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's going to roll a number between 5 and 30%, and that's what it's going to do. So sometimes you'll walk into a boss room and you will hit the boss with the first attack and they'll take 30% of their life and you feel really great. And then sometimes you'll walk into the boss room and you'll hit the boss and they'll take 5% of their life and you're like, okay, that kind of sucked. So it is a little RNG. I don't love that about it, but I will also mention that this is really good for clear as well, because every single time that you're shooting a mob with Galvanic Shards, they're instantly taking a bunch of damage to their life. So this is really, really good for clear, and it is good against bosses. It's most of the time you are not going to roll that 5%, and also most of the time you're not going to roll the 30%. You're going to be somewhere in the middle, right? Between the 15 to 20% range, and that's really good. Especially because you're pairing it with Culling Strike. So you're instantly taking off 15 to 20% of their life. And then also Culling Strike is effectively removing an additional 5% on uniques. So on average, you're probably having to do 20 to 25% less damage to a boss in order to kill it. So these go really well together, and this is basically the reason why you would want to play Witch Hunter. The other stuff that I'm taking here is Sorcery Ward. This is very experimental at the moment, but I think it's good. We don't have enough armor and evasion rating for this to, like, we never had enough for it to be like, oh man, we're feeling really good, and now it sucks that we lost our armor and evasion rating. So we kind of had just enough of both to feel kind of good about it. We had just enough of both to make Sorcery Ward feel good to take, because it's a decent amount of ward, but it's not not that bad to lose the armor and evasion rating, because we had like 50% evasion rating and like 30% armor. So that armor is basically useless. The evasion rating was good, but it wasn't so good that I would like give up Sorcery Ward for it. So yeah, I think that this is pretty good. It does, like you can see, I have this 1081 shield, and that's just on at all times. So this is very, very, very good. This is going to help your survivability a lot, especially against like AoE explosions and stuff, because you can see we don't have a ton of life. We have 2,500, which isn't bad, but you'll see that, you know, our gear isn't great, and that's kind of contributing to this number. So yeah, ideally we would have probably around like 3,300, 3,500 life, and then have Sorcery Ward on top of that, and then we'd be pretty tanky. So that's why I'm liking Sorcery Ward. To comment on kind of these ones that I'm not taking, Weapon Master is kind of a meme. You just don't need this many weapon set skill points. I can't imagine needing this many. The Zealous Inquisition it's good. It is good, but the problem is it's physical damage, which we're not really scaling at all, and then also we just kind of don't need AoE. Our AoE is pretty good. We don't really need extra explosions and stuff like that, but I could be convinced that this is good enough to take. I think the reason I haven't taken it is because I'm feeling quite squishy, so Sorcery Ward is helping a lot with that. And then the addition to Sorcery Ward of 50% increased effect and 50% faster recovery, like that's really good. So you're going to be recovering your Sorcery Ward in 4 seconds, and then also this, 1,000 would be at 1,500. So you'd effectively get 500 more HP against elemental attacks from this, which, I mean, a ton of stuff in this game is elemental damage. So I think that this is really strong and is kind of probably a little bit underrated right now. And then this stuff, I'm not sold on it. It seems too sketchy against bosses that have phases or kind of areas in the fight where you can't really attack them, because especially against like pinnacle bosses and stuff, they have a ton of HP. So, when you deal 40% of their maximum life, you've already chunked through a good amount of the fight, and the 30% more is probably not going to contribute too much for like too much of the fight. You know what I'm saying? Since you've already done 40%, now you're getting the 30% more. It's kind of, I would have rather had the 30% when I was doing the 40% of their life. Then also the fact that they start regaining concentration if they haven't lost concentration in the past 5 seconds. A lot of the times you're not going to be able to attack a boss for 5 seconds, because it's going to be in like a phased ability where you can't attack them and you have to be doing something, or they're going to have like, some sort of invulnerable phase. So that's why I really don't love this. No Mercy this is really good if it's always working. If basically the fight starts and you never stop doing damage for any period of time, so that you always have the maximum from No Mercy. So if you think you can do that, if you think it's realistic, then this is really good for bossing. If not, I think that it's pretty bad. It's okay for killing rares and stuff like that, but you should be able to kill rares without these abilities. So that's why I don't really love this, and I'm more into the idea of taking Sorcery Ward, because our tankiness is kind of rough. Tankiness is rough for everybody in the game unless you're playing ES. So whenever you can get a new layer of defense, I'm very much so attracted to that option. So yeah, so that's it for the ascendancy. Sorry, that was long, and we'll get into the passive tree. This one's a lot more complicated than the Titan video, if you guys watched that. And if you haven't, you can go on my channel and take a look at it if you want to. But I'll try to move a little bit faster since the ascendancy took a while. So we're starting here. We're taking attack speed, hitting remorseless, feel no pain, battle hardened, and then we're jumping out over here to get this attack speed wheel. I will say this, I just started getting this. So like when you're leveling, I wouldn't get this. I would make sure you go down here and get your lightning damage, get your crossbow stuff, get your culling. This stuff is more important than this stuff over here. So make sure this is kind of the direction I took at first, and then I came back and I'm getting this stuff now. So so we get this, and this is the first kind of weapon set you're going to see. A lot of this is I'm not focusing on getting ailments on my crossbow. I'm really only focusing on ailment stuff on my bow when I'm using shock Stormcaller arrow. I'm trying to shock. So that's what the green passives are, where you see this green line. That's my my second weapon set, which is the bow. So anything that is green is almost always going to be ailment or shock related. And that's why I'm putting it in on the bow, because I don't really care about my shock chance on my crossbow. I just care about when I pull out Stormcaller arrow, I shoot a bolt off, and then it shocks them. That's what I want that's what I want my shock to come from. So we're grabbing this stuff for our bow, for Stormcaller arrow, and then we're grabbing this stuff for some projectile damage, and that's on both. So then we travel down the tree here, a lot of travel nodes, which really sucks. We pick up some lightning damage here. This increased chance to shock is actually quite good. At some point I may put 2 points into here. We're not really doing electrocute, so we aren't really doing any of that stuff. So we don't take these nodes here. So we keep going down. We hop down here into this wheel, which is quite good. We grab this Emboldened Avatar on our bow, and then we grab these two nodes, increased elemental damage with attacks and penetrating 15% of enemy elemental resistances. We only grab these on the crossbow. That's the more red lines. This is a extremely good lightning tree right here. So we're getting percent chance to shock, we're getting penetration, we're getting increased lightning damage. We are only grabbing this side on the crossbow, and it's lightning damage with non-critical hits is lucky, which is completely insane. This is probably the best notable you get on the entire tree, so definitely make sure you path to here quickly and you grab it, because lightning damage is kind of different from the other types of elemental damage, and that has very, very wide ranges. Like a lot of the times you'll see it's like 20 to like 400 or something like that on your lightning damage range. So I think I can actually show you really quick. So yeah, you can see our main hand lightning damage on Galvanic Shards is, yeah, we can even look here, right? On the beam, it's 650 to 3,000. So you have a massive range that this can roll in. So what this does is when you roll for damage, you actually roll twice. So like if we look at Galvanic Shards and we look at the beam, 650 to 2,998. What the game does is it says, okay, cool, the beam hit an enemy, and now we need to determine how much damage that beam does. Our range is 650 to 3,000. So I'm going to roll the dice, and I'm going to see, okay, what's the number? Let's say the first time it rolls 650. Then it says, okay, that's the first roll, 650. Then it rolls the dice again, and let's say the second roll, it rolls 2,998, the maximum. So it rolls the minimum and the maximum. It will then say, okay, I'm going to take the higher number. So it takes 2,998, and that's the number that you get. So this is like an extremely crazy node. It does come with the restriction of, you're not critting, which is a big restriction. Like you obviously build absolutely no crit into the build, because all you want to do is use lightning rod. So I think that this node is really good though, and we'll talk about kind of what I think the future of the build is going to do, and it does involve lightning rod. So Yeah, definitely get this. This stuff right here is actually really, really good. This is a bunch of stuff that has to do with rare or unique enemies, and it also has a increased calling strike threshold. So this is really, really good. 25% it's a base increase to the calling strike threshold. So for example, with normal monsters, they get culled at 20% normally, but with a 25% increase, they're going to get culled at 25% life. So you're essentially taking another 5% max HP away from white mobs, and you're taking, different depending on what rarity the mob is. But this is really nice. I really, really like Cull the Hordes, and then Giant Slayer is just really good. It's a node that it's not always going to apply. Obviously, this only works against rare and unique enemies, but when it does work, it's really, really good. I mean, you're doing a lot more damage to them because of these nodes here, and you get some extra attack speed and stuff. So this is a really nice little cluster right here. We path over to the left, and then we're using our weapon set points again here to grab all this crossbow stuff. You obviously don't care about this at all with the bow, so you don't need this on the bow. We're grabbing 10% increased attack speed is really great. You get also 2 small nodes here for another 6%, and then 8% chance to blind enemies on hit, and then another 15% here. So a lot of good attack speed. Blinding enemies is nice. They have a 20% less accuracy rating, and it also reduces their evasion rating, which is nice if you're fighting evasive creatures. You have a lot of accuracy because you have a lot of dex, but it's nice. Popping up here, grabbing this ailment stuff for the bow. This is only for the bow up here. And then so just some ailment stuff, some increased chance to apply some shock. We're grabbing this stuff, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure I'm going to drop this at some point. This polymathy. I even had jack of all trades, but you can see I have such little intelligence that this is 2% for every 5, so 20% damage, and I'm putting 4 points to get over there, which just isn't worth it. So if you have a lot of stats in general, this could be worth taking. It's not worth taking for me, but if you, let's say your lowest stat was 100 or something like that, then it's 40% damage for 4 points, which could be worth it because you're also getting some reductions in attribute requirements to your skill gems and equipment, which isn't bad. It's 12% if you go that way. So it's up to you if you want to take jack of all trades, and I think I'm at the point where I'm probably going to unspec out of all of this stuff at some point and put more into some defense or something like that. We're grabbing all this armor and evasion, which is nice, but I'll talk about the future of the build in a little bit. But eventually this will probably go as well. And then let's look over here. So we're grabbing a bunch of penetration here for the crossbow. We're doing, unfortunately, a lot of traveling, but that's why we have to make use of so much of the weapon set stuff, because it's a little bit more efficient to get multiple types of things with that. So we're grabbing Catalysis, which is really, really good. I mean, it's 20% increased elemental damage with attacks, and then you also get to take some physical damage out and put that into a random element, which is also why the sorcery reward is really nice with Witch Hunter. So that's really nice. And then we're doing some travel here. We're grabbing this penetration. Going up here, we're getting General Electric with just the bow, so that we have that increased chance to shock. And then we are going over here, grabbing this jewel socket, and then we're popping up here to get over to Wild Storm for 15% more maximum lightning damage. This is also an extremely, extremely good notable. And there's probably an argument that you could take this as an anointment instead of going and getting it like this. I haven't really thought about what anointment I want for this build, but this is kind of far away, but there's actually a lot of good stuff over on this side of the tree, which makes this feel less bad to go path to, and I'll talk about that in a second. So I think that covers the tree as it is, but kind of what do I see the problems with this build, right? Problem number one is it's really hard to get an actual meaningful amount of armor and evasion. So I think the future of this build is as a pure evasion based build. So getting more of stuff like this, like going up and taking blur, taking like cat-like agility, getting a lot of these small evasion nodes And then also getting some... Sorry, cat started scratching at the door. But yeah, so also getting, like, going pure evasion, and then, you know, dropping all this armor stuff, except when they're efficient. Like, you know, this is still 20% evasion and stuff like that, and it gets you to some good nodes. But yeah, ideally, I think this is a pure evasion build, which means that we can also probably get a lot more out of our sorcery ward. Like, we will most likely have a lot more flat elemental. So yeah, the flat evasion would be very, very good. Just getting a bunch of evasion, not worrying about armor, and really pumping it to get a strong sorcery ward, as well as being able to have actual evasion. Because right now we only have 23% armor and 35% evasion, which is just dog water. This is like really not doing anything for us on either regard. So and armor is just kind of bad in this game right now. Unfortunately, it's really only meant for small hits, and it does less mitigation against big hits, which makes no fucking sense to me at all. If anything, I think it should be the other way around. So yeah, it's I think what makes more sense is going all in on evasion, accepting that you're going to lose some to the sorcery ward, but at the end of the day, you'll still have a functional stat. Like, if you could have, you know, 60% evasion or something after you lose some to obsessive rituals, that would still be acceptable. Like, it would still be a good defensive layer, whereas with armor, it just would never actually be that meaningful. So I think that's the direction that I want to take the build in terms of the defenses. But yeah, it's a little tough right now. So right now I can still get through red maps kind of no problem. Sometimes I'll get one shot, but that's the nature of the game when you're playing a squishy build like this. So, but yeah, I think you'd do a lot better if you could just get into a pure evasion build, and then you'd still have a fat sorcery ward to help protect you against, you know, AoE hits and stuff. And you'd also be able to, you know, evade some hits. So you'd have a functional layer of defense along with sorcery ward. Which right now, I mean, yeah, you might get lucky and evade a hit, but you only have 35% chance. So yeah, and then the other piece of the build that I wanted to talk about was there is a unique amulet that I'm very interested in, which is Choir of the Storm Jade Amulet, and it's entirely based around crit. So that's what I was talking about with Lightning Rod, is obviously if you're building into crit, you don't need or really want Lightning Rod, because with crit, you should be critting all the time if you're even bothering on building into it. You have a lot of actually crit nodes already near where we're at. You know, we have this crit cluster right here, a crit cluster right here. We have a big crit cluster right here, another crit cluster right here. So we're already really, really close to all of, you know, a lot of the good crit clusters on the tree. So I think it would be a pretty simple retool to move from, you know, this stuff with Lightning Rod and move over to a crit-based build and use Choir of the Storm, which is critical hits ignore enemy monster lightning resistance, as well as you trigger a lightning bolt on critical hit. So I think that could be fun, and it might be something actually kind of strong. That's kind of where I think the build is going to go, because I'm having trouble scaling a lot of the damage in the build at the moment, because there's just not that much that you can do to you know, scale non-crit builds. And scaling crit in this game is like extremely broken because of how strong scaling the bonus crit damage is in the game right now. So if you can go crit, I think it's definitely worth it. And yeah, there's just a lot of good crit nodes already where we're at. But the gear is obviously much more expensive and harder to get. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for the passives. So we can take a look at the gear really quick. So we'll talk about the crossbow last, because obviously the weapons are the most important. But yeah, my gear on this character is quite bad. But it's a testament to the strength of the character that, like, I kind of breezed through everything up until red maps when I started hitting a bit of a wall, and I wasn't res capped up until then. And then I, finally bit the bullet and spent some time just, buying a few things here and there for like a couple exalts each. And then, I got res capped, and now I'm much, much tankier. So yeah, we have this this helmet. It has some max life, some rarity. Rarity's kind of nice, but I think it's a little overhyped on Reddit right now. People are saying it's like the best thing since sliced bread, and it's just kind of fine. And then some resistance. Ideally, you have obviously 3 resistances on this and some other useful things, but you gotta take what you can get. This amulet's actually pretty good. Percent increased evasion rating is nice. Maximum life is really good. And then some stats: strength, intelligence, and a resistance, and then some rarity. These rings are god awful, but they are chaos resistance and a T8 life roll on each of them, so it feels really bad to replace them. But yeah, that's what we have right now. And then the armor, this is a good chest piece, but unfortunately, like I said, I think eventually we want to move to a pure evasion rating build. So I'll probably eventually replace like all of these hybrid pieces, and this is an armor piece. I'll probably eventually replace all of this with evasion rating gear, and then just try to scale pure evasion rating. But for now, this is what we have, and this is a really good one. I think I bought this for like 1 or 2x or something, or maybe 5. So yeah, you got a ton of resistances and then some life. And then the gloves, ideally you would have attack speed on your gloves. This doesn't have attack speed obviously, but you have increased crit damage bonus for if I ever can get over to crit. And then yeah, some life and resistance here, life and resistance, some armor, and then these boots are the same ones that I was using on my Titan. I just moved them over. So increased move speed, a bunch of life, and then tri-res. So these boots are great, but eventually I'd probably replace them. So about the weapon, it's I think kind of dumb in the fact that like you don't want lightning damage on your weapon, but yeah, this crossbow is just okay. I think it's around 350 PDPS or something like that when I did the calc. And it might be even a little bit different because you have to reload crossbows. You can't just attack all the time. So it's probably not even that much. But yeah, it's fine. You just want a crossbow that has a really fat percent increased physical damage roll. And then both the sockets you want to be percent increased physical damage. And then ideally you have some attack speed. If you're crit, you ideally have 2 crit suffixes like +2 percentage to crit, as well as +2 critical damage bonus. And then the base doesn't matter too much, honestly. I think you would want a dyad crossbow, which loads an additional bolt if you can help it. But if you can't find it, or if you can't find a good one that has good rolls on it and stuff, like you should just buy the crossbow that has good rolls on it. Don't worry too much about the implicit. It's really not that big of a deal. Then we have a thawing charm. Ideally, I would actually have 3 charms because getting stunned really sucks as well. Or even just 2. But if you have 2, might as well have 3. Just have the better mod. So yeah, we have a thawing charm, and then I would want a stun charm, and then probably if I had a third, I would take the gold charm to get a little bit of rarity on the rare mobs that you're killing. So yeah, that's pretty much the gear. It's pretty basic, just life and resistances. But yeah, there's a few optimizations you could do, like attack speed on the gloves. And then I think a percent increased evasion rating on your amulet will actually be kind of important. So yeah, and then we can take a look at Atlas passives really quick. So here are the Atlas passives. I showed this in the Titan video. I'm showing it again. I think I got a couple more. I don't really care too much about magic monsters, but I ended up getting Rising Danger and Twin Threats to get additional rare monsters because that's all I really care about in my maps, as well as getting Waystone Chance. So I grabbed a little bit more quantity on this Waystone quantity, and then I'm working on getting higher tier Waystones, and then I'll probably finish out with just some additional precursor tablets and stuff. After you get kind of this stuff on this wheel, and you get Deadly Evolution, and then you obviously have all the stuff for your Waystone sustain. kind of doesn't really matter what you do. I'll probably actually end up taking Lucky Pillage for some increased quant and rarity. But yeah, it kind of doesn't matter what you do at this point. This stuff is all just nice to have. The stuff that I already had was the important stuff. So yeah, Fortunate Path, Constant Crossroads, High Road, getting your Waystones, and your quantity, and then yeah, getting extra quantity of Waystones and Deadly Evolution. Deadly Evolution is really, really good. We know that each modifier on a rare monster contributes to the quantity of that rare monster. I think it's 10% per modifier. So getting 2 additional modifiers on a rare monster is 20% additional quant, which is really, really good because most of your drops are coming from rare monsters and maps. So that's also why I wanted to get Rising Danger and Twin Threats, to just get additional rare monsters in the maps. And sometimes you can run into some sketchy combinations because you're kind of juicing your rares. You have Deadly Evolution, you have a bunch more, and then you have some that are duplicated. So like the duplicated ones can have some pretty bad overlapping auras sometimes, but for the most part it's pretty manageable. I haven't had too many problems. So yeah, that's Atlas passives, and then we'll run a quick map. And let's see, do I have a boss anywhere that I can do? Yeah, we have Rust Bowl right here, so we'll run this. So we're just going to be mainly clearing with Galvanic shots, and then we're any rares that are kind of tanky, we will shock them with Stormcaller Arrow, and then we'll go ahead and use Shockburst rounds to finish them off. But yeah, you can see that the clear is pretty good. It's pretty much kill whatever direction I'm pointing in, as well as you get to do it from pretty far away, so you don't get in too much trouble for the most part. And you can see our sorcery ward kicking in, and whenever we're getting hit by these little projectiles from these guys out here, it's preventing that damage. So it definitely helps with the tankiness. And you'll see that sometimes we run into some problems with killing like one singular enemy, which is kind of an annoyance of the build, and it's something that I don't really know how to fix. Like when it's just one enemy and I can't get a lightning beam arcing between them with Galvanic shot, sometimes I just like take a while to kill like a blue monster, just a magic monster, can take a little bit. So it's a weird problem to have. I've never really seen it before on a build, but it's just by nature of us really only doing AoE damage. So you can see that's Stormcaller, and then we're using our Shockburst to hopefully kill these guys. But it's kind of, sometimes you see, sometimes they don't get shocked, and that's really annoying because you're just kind of sitting there waiting for them to get shocked. But it's pretty rare. Most of the time, the first time you shoot a rare, it's going to get shocked, unless it's like ailment or lightning resistant. Something like that can be annoying, and sometimes you'll have to shoot them a few times to get them shocked. But that's also an argument to why you could actually maybe use less of the weapon skill points that I'm using, because right now a lot of the lightning damage that I have spec'd in the tree isn't applying to Stormcaller Arrow, which means that it's not hitting that hard, which means that, well, it's not that it's not hitting hard, it's just not hitting as hard as it would if I had it all spec'd in. And that means that your chance to shock is a little bit less, even though we have so much good percent chance to shock in the tree. Oh my god, proximal tangibility is just can't quite get enough of it. Yeah, that's probably the single most annoying modifier that you can get on a rare, because you have to stand right next to them while you're using your Stormcaller Arrow, and it can be really, really annoying. And since we have additional modifiers on the rares, it's pretty common that they will have proximal tangibility. I usually run into one at least every map. Alright, so this is kind of where the build is really strong, is against bosses. So you can see what I was saying with Decimating Strike. Sometimes you just kind of don't hit. Like, you know, I only hit probably 5% or something of his life. Yeah, so you can see we pretty much melt the boss, and that's pretty consistent. For most bosses, you'll kill them within a couple, you know, rotations of their skills. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you need anything in terms of this build, or you have any questions, feel free to sound off in the comments. I try to reply to them all. And then yeah, if you guys want to check out the Earthshatter Titan guide, or if you want to follow up on that, let me know in the comments, or you can check it out on the channel. Yeah, let me know what you think. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and yeah, let me know what you think of the build, and if you think that you do anything different. Cheers.